So in 10 years, they just took the idea. Yes. Windows like 90. Thank you very much. I don't have my cards with me. I will send you. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Last. Have this line.
E si vede te o si vede dietro? Wow, ce l'abbiamo fatta oggi. Ce l'abbiamo fatta oggi. Desislava, you continue to use the paper and not automatically the mobile phone. No, because it jokes because it's normally she Spanish, because normally I use WhatsApp for
Yes.
So, no, this way everyone in the world has number.
That's what I often
Osvaldo, sta arrivando qualcuno, ma io inizio, se lo facciamo. Sta iniziando, sta arrivando, ma questi non ci stanno. No, se no inizio, che dico? Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the plenary session, and I'm very honored to introduce Professor Kasun Hewage. I'm very happy that he accepted our proposal to be our keynote, because it has a very okay. Have you listened? I have to repeat, or you understand what I said? Probably it's more clear, and because it's an impressive CV, also with a lot of papers and cooperation all over the world, but he coupled at the same time academic activity also with the practical activity as engineer, and it's very interesting for this. He's obviously full professor and FortisBC Smart Energy Chair in the School of Engineering at the University of British Columbia in Canada. He also serves as Associate Director of UBC Clean Energy Research Center and Director of Life Cycle Management Laboratory, and also bring extensive multidisciplinary industrial experience in Canada and internationally. This is the very interesting point, because in his speech he will also explain theoretical approach, but also with the practical example, and is very with the experience very interesting. Obviously, his research focus on life cycle thinking in the urban development, energy policies, and infrastructure planning. This is very important because today we have the one of the target is the carbon neutrality, but it's not easy to reach this target because we have a problem. For instance, in planning, we have all the planning document, probably without considering the problem of energy, other sustainability aspects. At the same time, normally local authority, also government has problem of budget. It's not easy to implement this, but it's important also to have an holistic approach to this research, considering all kinds of aspects, and also participatory aspect is interesting. Professor Hewage has supported government, infrastructure development, and community advanced in low impact and net zero development strategy for both existing and planned community. This is important, and I'm happy that he will show this experience. Now I'll give the floor to him to his speech, and I hope that you will enjoy with this interesting presentation.
Hello, good morning all. So thank you for the introduction. I'm Kasun Hewage, Professor of Civil Engineering. So you must be wondering what a civil engineer do in this conference, right? So let's see. So you will see lots of practical examples of using certain mathematical tools to reach the net zero energy goals and also the sustainability goals of the Canadian and the global situations. And before jumping into the presentation, I will show you some pictures, and I will promise you, I will not show you a single equation today, right? So that may be challenging for some of you, but let's see, we'll go through that journey. So why this audience matters to me? When I got this invitation, this audience really matters to me. In my research group, I work closely with mathematicians, urban planners, architects, different types of engineers, city planners, and so on. And this audience is the baseline there. The tools you are providing, the mathematical guidance you are providing is very important for my work. So, and the net zero transitions are computational problems. At the same time, they are governance problems. So we have to bridge this gap between the governance and the computational side. That's where my research is placed in. And as you see that, the communication needs models that integrate buildings, energy, transportation, and so on. And the gap is not only in the data availability, and it is about the decision-making power. I think in our first keynote, Claudia mentioned about dealing with politicians, people who do not have technical background. So we have to feed them with the right information in the right time, in the right format. Now, in this presentation, I will walk you through some of the context, the platform, my lab, and what we are doing. some of the stories and methods with some case studies, and then finally the implications. Now, first of all, I want to show you a map of Canada. Many of you have been there, and you know what is Canada is about. The Canada is almost the size of entire Europe, about 10 million square kilometers. The province I came from is British Columbia, over there, that corner. And that's about just over 900,000 square kilometers, 10 times the size of Portugal, the single province. And now we have 42 million, about 41, 42 million population. They all, 90% of that population lives just 300 kilometers from that border with US. So that's the belt. But we have lots of nature and at the same time wilderness in Canada. This is the city which I came from, which is Kelowna. That lake is called the Okanagan Lake. That is 135 kilometers long, about 3 to 5 kilometers wide. So I'm showing you some pictures because it will build me the context for this presentation. The Okanagan Valley, this city is in, is famous for wineries. We were in a winery yesterday, and it's called the wine capital of Canada. And also during the winter time, it's a ski capital as well. So most of my grad students and I, in the weekends, end up on this particular ski hill called Big White. That's not me, by the way. And this is our university, the part of the university. So that's the engineering building over there. So I'm just showing you some pictures. Now, with these pictures, you see that even though Canada is an energy superpower, we have lots of oil, natural gas in Canada. Canada is always thriving for sustainability. There's a federal and the provincial government push to achieve those sustainability targets. Now, in this case, we identified if you want to achieve those sustainability goals, the community is the transformation. You have to change the community to achieve those targets. Now, the decision gap comes in that community level is that in the global level, if you go to Kyoto Protocol, Paris, or whatever the government or the international targets, they comes in the tons of carbon dioxide equivalents. When you go to the provincial or the municipal level, they don't deal exactly with the same values, same numbers. They deal with bylaws, budgets, their work packages, and individual decisions on certain things. And that's where the concept of life cycle thinking comes into the picture. So I will explain the concept of life cycle thinking in the next few slides, but the life cycle thinking connects those levels by tracing the consequences across time, space, and supply chains. So life cycle thinking looks three specific dimensions, as you know, in sustainability: life cycle costing, which is the entire costing of its life cycle assessments, which is the environmental impacts, and the life cycle social assessments, LCSA. This is the chain. It's like our life. So we see projects and we see decisions as a life, which starts from, like in our lives, we have a birth and we have a death. And if you believe life after death, then maybe we come back to the birth again. In the same concept, the life cycle thinking starts with raw materials extraction. Then you go with construction, user phase or maintenance, renewal or retrofit, end of life, and after that boundary, maybe you recycle that material again with the circular economic principles. Now, in this case, what the boundary we are considering is very important. Which part of boundary you are thinking about the assessments? Many of our assessments in this world are looking at that construction to the user phase, right? So if you say a LEED gold standard or a sustainable standard building, mostly we are looking at that construction and the user phase. Let me explain it a little bit more with the next slide. Now, this is not a published study, but a very famous study a discussion happened about 20 years ago. A case of Prius and a Hummer. So I believe you all know what's a Prius, right? It's an electric vehicle. And a Hummer is a previous US military vehicle, huge kind of a SUV. Now the GM got it back to the market. So people were arguing between which one is more sustainable. I know this is not a class, but how many of you think Prius is more sustainable? Just raise your hand. Okay, thank you. How many of you think Hummer is more sustainable? We have one. Do you drive a Hummer? No. Okay, sure. So others are thinking, okay, it's a debate. Now, if you see Prius in its user phase, when you are using the Prius, of course, it uses less fuel. And within the user phase, it's much more sustainable. I agree with you. But if you think about the rare material extraction for its battery manufacturing, making lithium-ion batteries, using it, and then recycling those batteries point of view, the picture might be a bit different. People argue different ways. 20 years ago, people argued, yes, Hummer is much better. Now the battery technology is improved, recycling improved. Now we are thinking that, yes, the electric vehicles going there. But even if you check Tesla website, they said that they recycle 100% of their batteries. But if you go a little bit deeper to find out how they do it, it's unclear. So now you see that the life cycle thinking is not only about the user phase, it is about the entire life cycle question. A similar question comes on the plastic and paper bags. If you reuse a plastic bag over and over and over again, it is much more sustainable than a paper bag, right? And for paper bags, the manufacturing part, and at the same time, the time you can reuse it versus the recycling, it needs energy. So this is a published study. You can find it on the internet. Now I think you got a clear idea about the life cycle thinking concept. It's the way you are thinking, the way you are keeping the boundaries on to make a decision. So on a net zero energy community point of view, the communities have different concepts, different items coming into it. Buildings, there are industrial zones, energy coming in, mobility, water, waste. So it's a complex system. You cannot make a decision with a single dimension. So for the mathematicians or the data scientists, it's a multi-objective optimization, right? So there are multi or many objective optimization. So it has when you want to make a decision about the community, you have to think about the embodied energy, operational, end-of-life impacts, interactions among land use, transportation, energy demand, and their reliabilities, and so on. And also the renewable energy fraction, right? So how we can integrate renewable energy. Not a single source or a single method applies for all the different situations. With that in our mind, now let me introduce the lab or the research group I'm leading. It's called the Lifecycle Management Lab. When I joined UBC, actually before joining UBC, I was in the oil and gas industry. I worked a few years there. And then I joined with the University of British Columbia. And then we saw the government is moving towards these sustainability targets without having the real assessments. So they don't know exactly where to place the policies, where to place their certain incentives, and where to motivate people, where to build communities, and so on. So I started this lab from the scratch, even though University of British Columbia has about 70,000 full-time equivalent students. This is the first time we started a life cycle management lab about 20 years ago. So currently, this lab has 2 professors of the research program, myself and my colleague, Rehan Sadiq, who's the provost of the university. And he's a water and infrastructure specialist. Together, we supervise 6 postdocs, 16 PhDs, 6 masters and visiting scholars, and so on. And one of the key parts when we were funded to have this lab, the government wanted us to disseminate knowledge. So we are very productive in publishing. So over the last 20 years, we published over 400 journal articles coming from the lab. And these are in the top-notch journals, not like paid journals, but because we wanted to disseminate whatever the knowledge we generate in the lab, we want to disseminate. It's a government mandate for us. And whenever an industrial partner comes to us, that was open. We always say that we do research, but we want to publish. We don't keep it to ourselves, or we will not only give it to yourself. And many technical reports and the other projects went on. And I want to explain two more areas here, two more entities, NSERC and MITAX. These are the funding sources. How the funding system works in Canada is that when the industry gives us a single dollar, we go to the government. Usually they match it 1-to-1. But if the project has a national relevance, it's a 1-to-2. So if the industry gives us a $1, then the government gives us $2 more. So we have $3. So that's how all this research program and the funding went on in the research way. So currently, our lab focuses in 6 different distinctive areas: energy systems, urban development, water systems, which is my colleague is mainly focusing on, waste management, construction management and assets, and products and processes. Now, like by integrating all these things, we want to transform the communities to the next level of sustainability. So there are many private sector partners join with us. So the partner integration model we have is a recurring pattern. We ask the partner about the problem they have. We don't ask the discipline. So they give us the problem. So I did my grad studies in engineering project management. So I use that knowledge or the expertise there as well. Once we have the partner problem, we identify the expertise you need. We don't look at the problem from the disciplinary boundaries. Otherwise, as a civil engineer, if I want to do only the civil engineering, it doesn't work in this particular case. That's what I told to Beninimio. Like in this particular case, I work with planners, architects, data scientists, mathematicians, electrical engineers, and so on. But the concept is the same. Identify the problem, we implement the lifecycle model, we try different scenarios, and then we use decision support frameworks, which you folks are engaged, and at the same time, implementation guidance. Now, I'll jump into the main part of the presentation. So the lessons we learned from this Canadian applied life cycle research. The word applied, I purposely put it there. I'm in the engineering school of engineering is a part of faculty of applied science. Applications are the key part here. So the case one, this is funded for the last 10 years or so with BC Housing. When the British Columbia wanted to have all the new construction net zero energy ready by 2030, the government was not sure how to implement those guidelines. Most importantly, the existing houses. So if you travel around here in Braga or in Portugal, I have noted that probably about more than 70-80% of the building stock is old houses. Now, if you want to have that energy efficiency in these houses, you have to identify the right retrofit packages, what to retrofit, what to include there. Now, simply if you want to have a air conditioner or a wall panel or a triple glazed windows, we don't know exactly whether it's the right way to move forward. So in this particular case, what we did was that we identified hundreds of retrofit packages for these different buildings, did the life cycle assessment and life cycle costing for those ones, and then we did the multi-criteria decision making and the Pareto analysis, and then came with the actionable strategies. So to do this part, which is close to your comfort zone about the Pareto analysis and the multi-criteria, I hired 2 postdocs who had PhDs in mathematics. So, and at the same time, there were 2 data scientists from UBC were engaged in this process, because that's very important. But personally, from my side, that's part of the engine. What's important is the actionable strategies. When we want to go to the BC housing, what they are requesting us is not that mathematical model, not the life cycle assessment, but what can we do in what time frame. That's what we have done in this particular project. And this is one of the publications came up with on that particular project. So I will finally show you a link to download all my publications if needed. Now I'll come to the second one, right? Before second one, the lesson. So in that BC housing project, what we learned was that buildings are kind of a living organisms. They connect carbon, affordability, health, resilience, and peak demand. Now, recently, when I read news in the last few days, I listened that about 1,300 people died with the certain recent heat wave here in Europe. So, mostly because of that, the building resilience point of view, many buildings do not have air conditioning, and people are struggling because those are designed in a different setting. So, the retrofitting point of view, I believe in Europe, in the next 5 years, there will be a huge wave coming up. People will adapt. Government has to adapt, which Canada did about 10 years back, because we saw it. We saw this climate change and we experienced it quite intensively in Canada. So it should consider the future climatic conditions and the peak demands and the lowest energy options. And decision makers' point of view, those politicians, they need packages of measures, not single recommendations. So we have to let them know that if this thing and that thing and this thing happens, these are the recommendations you have. Whenever I meet my politician colleagues, sometimes once a month, sometimes regularly, what they ask me is simply what to do now, right? They don't do whatever I say as exactly, but what do you think? They don't ask me the mathematical background behind it, but I want to make sure that I give them the right advice on the right time frames. This is the FortisBC Smart Energy Chair. So I will show you different cases. FortisBC is the energy provider for British Columbia, one of the key energy providers. And they created the chair in 2019 and asked me to take that chair position. So I took that chair in 2014, and they gave me 4 different targets to focus on: building energy performance, BC, the electrical vehicle demand side management, clean technologies, and BC energy step code. So building energy performance, we all understand. Let me explain you the BC energy step code. On the step code point of view, as I mentioned, British Columbia wants to reach the net zero energy level target for all the new construction by 2030. It has 5 steps. Many municipalities now reach the 3rd step. So this energy provider wanted to know that how to reach that 5th step with the BC energy step code and what are the guidance. I think about 5 to 6 PhDs worked in that area, and they have completed that process, and now we are in a full implementation. Electric vehicle demand side management point of view, yes, government had incentives. They had promoted electric vehicle adaptation in country. However, many buildings reported that they cannot cope up with the peak energy demand. If all the vehicles are plugged in at the same time, the building shuts off. So the peak energy demand point of view, how to handle that particular situation, because it's very difficult to have another line to a building or increase the capacity, especially with the current climate conditions. So many iterations happen there on the peak demand and the planning side point of view. At the clean technologies point of view, it's the instrumentation. At UBC campus, we built the first passive building at UBC, student building, and we instrumented each and every room with sensors to figure out how the energy demand and the ventilation and at the same time humidity and other user behaviors moving on. Then Under the Fortis chair, there are a few publications again came up. About 20 some publications came here, and I only presented 4 here. The chair number 2. So with the successful completion of that first chair, they renewed the chair again in 2025. This is still ongoing. This is where the company wanted now to focus on the community level. That's where the title of the presentation comes in. Initially, it's building, and then we realized that if you really want to achieve the sustainability goals, it's not the individual building. You have to focus on the community. And we are heavily working on the planning and decision support frameworks to achieve that community level net zero energy targets, and developing our own databases, best management practices and guidelines to achieve the energy security and also the climate responsive building stock. Now, similar to here, now the community in the British Columbia, which I'm coming from, usually we have hot temperatures in the summer, but we haven't had this sort of extreme peaks all of a sudden for many centuries. Now, last year, around March, we had flooding in British Columbia, and within 2 weeks, suddenly you have forest fires, right? So you switch from one extreme to suddenly to the other extreme. So how the buildings can adapt to these sort of extreme situations were analyzed in this particular case. So the lesson 2 out of those 2 projects is that the energy systems we are working on, they simply need the flexibility and also the efficiency. Efficiency is important. Many of us are focusing on those parts, but the flexibility becoming the key part here. So my plea or my request to our data scientists and the computer engineers here and urban planners and so on, please think about that flexibility side. So it is, if you're simply focusing on the improving the efficiency of the current systems, that only a one dimension. The flexibility side is the key player nowadays. So with that, then I move to the third case study. I'm moving a little faster here with these different case studies to come to the final message and also with the timing. So this particular project was funded by 2 different cities, City of Kelowna and City of Vernon. Now, in this particular case, the city wanted to know where to place the new development. As you know that Canada is a country of migrants. So they invite about 500,000 people every year to the country to maintain the population. This year, the Canada had, after a few years, the population decreased, but to maintain the economy, they want to have immigrants coming in. When they are coming in, where to have those new communities? There's a problem there. When you have a new community somewhere, it's not only the community, you have to think about the transportation, then you have to think about the schooling, water, sewer, and all other dimensions coming up with that community. So in that particular case, in this project, we developed certain scenarios for urban development and collected data in the city, and then did the full-scale life cycle impact assessments and the comparative analysis. With that, we provided cities certain options. So to achieve the climate targets and at the same time to have a practical city development point of view, where to place the buildings, in what capacity, in what population, and so on. I don't claim this as only my work. Probably about 15 different academics. I led the project, but 15 different people contributed to this particular task. There were many transportation engineers, urban planners, data scientists work with me, and social scientists collecting data. And together, we provided these plans to the city, and city is now changed their the city plans for the next 10 years based on our scientific input. And at the same time, I have to admit that these are dynamic situations. We provided the plans, but at the same time, things can change. And we address that dimension with the uncertainty analysis as well. So scenario modeling and from the policy lever's point of view, so we focused on the design standards, energy code levels, district energy systems, retrofit incentives, mobility patterns, material choices in these cities, and so on. When I mention the word scenario, many people ask this question, what do you mean by a scenario analysis? A scenario is not a prediction. So it's not only a prediction, right? It's a way to test choices before concrete, steel, and infrastructure budgets are locked in. It's a kind of choices we have. With certain choices, what sort of planning frameworks which we can have for the cities and the planners. The lesson 3 I got for this audience from that study is that housing density and the changes, the mobility demand, and urban development decisions cascades across many sectors. As soon as you make a decision to have an urban center somewhere, it's very difficult to reverse it back. So because you already started the infrastructure work, you laid the underground pipes, electrical networks, and so on, it's very difficult to take it back. So thorough data analysis, analytics, and at the same time, simulations are needed in that environment before we make the decision. Always remember, it's not us, the scientists make the decision. It's politicians. So when you present this sort of plan in front of a politician, they think about their vote base. At the same time, they think about their images. So there's a balance over there, which we have to carefully handle. Case 4, right? This, that's one of my PhD students. This project actually, when it was funded by a startup company, they wanted to develop a micro-carbon capture system for a building level. Micro-carbon capturing is a common thing for oil and gas industry and big factories, but for the building level. That particular gentleman was, he came up with a device that's on the table there, like a prototype, and a sensor system where the carbon emitted by a building can be captured, and then it can be converted to soap, right? So it looks like an interesting project. So then I provided him funding, asked him to move ahead with the project. And then in this particular case, we pilot tested it in one of our campus buildings. In the winter time, the carbon dioxides emitted from the building were captured and converted into potassium bicarbonate. And then we converted it to soap. And in the washrooms, we said that the soap you are using in this building were actually the carbon emitted from that particular building. With that knowledge, with that the idea we developed, a startup company started, not me, a private investor, and now they are in the commercial business. So that's one of the successful stories of grad students coming up with their ideas and then really commercializing such projects. A good publication coming up from that particular project is here. It was published there in the International Journal of Greenhouse Gas Emissions. Case 5. Now, this one is a living lab. It's called the Wilden Living Lab. The website is there. In this particular case, we partnered with a community developer. We asked the developer to give us an area where we can play with. Play in the sense that we built 3 houses. We means the community developer funded it, and the university and my research group provided all the technical details, all the information, and we built 3 different houses. Or you can now 3. In the past, we said that house of today and house of tomorrow. And the house of tomorrow became house of today after some time, and then we built another house of tomorrow. House of tomorrow always had the best top-notch technologies, renewable energy, solar panels, heat pumps, and so on. And then we sold. The community developers sold those properties to real people, right? There was a certain price gap in buildings, but it was compensated by certain government grants, because we really wanted to test whether the houses of tomorrow, these so-called new buildings, work in the real life environment. This project has been going on for about 12 years or so. Recently, one of my PhD students graduated, and she's an architect. And her research is interesting in a way. She combined the indigenous knowledge of community development. In Canada, as you know, that there are many indigenous population lived there for thousands of years, and they had certain ways of living. And in this community, what we did was that this lady went through different indigenous communities, interviewed elders, and collected that knowledge of community development and implemented it in this particular urban center, which is called the Wilden, in a practical manner. So it's not that clear in those two settings. If you go to that your left side corner, the initial plan had a one green area over there. Now with her plan, with the same lots and with the same type of buildings, she came up with different green areas, multiple green areas, and the houses were located in an interesting way. Now, typical North American setting is that you have a road and then you have houses around it. What she did was that there's a green area in the middle and all the houses coming around it with this indigenous concept. And at the same time, the orientation, the land patterns, land use were all considered there. And these buildings were actually in very high demand. When they put it on the market with the right marketing, it went out very quickly because it works for that particular environment. And the company was very happy about the scientific input we have provided. Another case study. So I'm showing you some practical examples of doing research. This is about the aquatic centers, swimming pools. Now, in a swimming pool, as you see that when you go there, you see water, but it is not only water. There's a huge energy demand, and at the same time, there are health concerns, especially with the chemicals they are using in the public swimming pools, right? High chlorines and other chemicals. And in this case, I even collaborated with a couple of oncologists and medical doctors in the Vancouver Coastal Health to figure out the health impacts of the swimming pools and the chemicals. And then we focused on the energy systems and the water side. Now, so far, this project is moving on. We are in the second year. There's another 3 years to go on. The aim is to develop some solid guidelines for public swimming pools. And still, in Canada, there are no such guidelines. Operators simply test it in the morning and they operate it based on their knowledge, but there are no guidelines. So this work will have some impacts down in the road. So the lesson 4, which I can pass it to the team, is that, as I mentioned, building management decisions are dynamic. Once you make a decision, once you provide a tool to the building managers, you always have to think that it's a dynamic decision. So again, my call for this audience is that when you are developing tools, please think about that flexibility. Without that flexibility, if you provide the solid tool for certain partner, it works for a particular situation in a particular time, but soon it will become obsolete. And generalizability. So is it only for this location or somewhere else, another country, another place? That's also an important dimension here. This particular case, again, two PhD students and one master student got involved in this particular tool, which we have developed called the NRB. I believe you heard about the building information modeling. In the building information modeling, it's beyond AutoCAD. AutoCAD has like 2D or 3D maps, but the building information modeling has all the other data associated with building components, materials, the supply chain, and so on. However, so far, building building information modeling and the energy analysis point of view, there is a gap. There are certain plugins you can have on Revit, but there's still a gap, especially on the urban development point of view. So we developed this tool called the EnerBIM and provided it to the municipalities free of charge. So the building information modeling data linked with the structures and the other energy, retrofit strategies, carbon management strategies, and so on. And it's been widely praised by these municipalities to have such a tool free of charge. Now, in this particular case, even though it's my project, the real leads of the project were data scientists. So a couple of data scientists completely worked on figuring out what data has to be transmitted and what has to come on their building information models. Case 8, right? I'm taking you quickly through different projects in different senses. This is about the hydrogen infrastructure. Now, in many municipalities in Canada, the public bus transport is electrified, but now we are thinking of using hydrogen there as a source. So in this particular case, if you want to have hydrogen, it's not only the hydrogen production, the use. Remember the slide I showed you earlier with the life cycle. So it's where to produce hydrogen, how to transport, where to store it, use it, and the engine or the battery or the system manufacturing, and so on. So we are doing currently a full-scale analysis for different municipalities by considering different routes on which scale we can have the hydrogen infrastructure. Case 9. This is about a one water in a small rural communities. Now, I mentioned initially, even though Canada has 42 million people as population, we all live in 300 kilometers above the border. But Canada is a huge country. Especially with the current geopolitical situations, Canadian government wants to have communities in the north, right? Otherwise, they are worried that we will lose that sovereignty on the north side. So there's lots of funding. Government is pushing billions and billions of dollars to build those communities in the northern regions. The problem is that these are isolated small communities. In those communities, having the right energy for heating and in the summer maybe cooling, and at the same time transportation, food security, and at the same time the community development is a challenge. They call it civil technologies. They call it dual use for the military and also for the public. So dual use technologies. So our lab was contacted on that particular front as well, and that's where this sort of projects comes up with the one water, right? So it's about the community development by considering a single water source for all those things, and at the same time renewable energy and community development in remote isolated communities. They call it less than 5,000 people living in a community. Closest community may be few hundred kilometers away. Now with that, I think what's in front of us is the uncertainty. So climate change is there. It's happening faster than we think. And that's where the data analytics point of view, it plays a huge role. So future weather extremes and climate adaptation needs point of view, we have a lot to do. We engineers, I believe I'm going to represent engineers now. We engineers are hugely dependent on you folks who are doing models, frameworks, data analytics, and so on. We are on the application side, but I don't personally understand too much on those mathematical sides. And I admit it, that's not my expertise. So that's where your expertise needs. And at the same time, urban planning point of view, that's not my expertise either. So I have to learn and get that knowledge from those folks, but together we have to build those communities for the future climatic extremes, with the adaptation needs. With that, of course, the technology needs, supply chains, grid decarbonization, and several other dimensions coming up. But at the same time, so far in my presentation, I did not talk about the people, human dimension. People are living there. I'll give you a quick example here. I told you we built the first passive building, passive energy building at the UBC, student housing, and building was instrumental. So we were continuously monitoring, and in the end of the first year, I checked all the data with my students and realized that all our models were off. It does not capture what's actually happening in the building. I thought the models were wrong. And then we tested the models. Models were perfect. But perfect means that there were no errors. And then what I did was that I hired 2 students who are living in that building and let me know what's actually happening in the student behaviors on those buildings. It happens to be, even in the winter cold days, students prefer to open the window to have some fresh air coming in. So it doesn't matter how efficient your system is, how you planned all the heat recovery and so on, student keeps windows open. And we cannot force it. It's a behavioral issue, right? So then we had to have some educational programs, and we put some screens on the hallways to let them know what this building is all about, and we improved it. But that human dimension is also extremely important. That's where we need help from the social scientists. So the last lesson, lesson 5, is the waste, water, and hydrogen are the part of the same metabolism. If you think about an urban community, you cannot see a problem in isolation. Everything is connected. More and more you dig deep, you will feel like everything is connected. So that's where the complexity coming up. So the life cycle model works in that particular case where I can bring that life cycle perspective from the data to models to decisions to learning. And what I have here actually, I thought about it, and then I have to admit I asked ChatGPT to build that the picture for me. What is there for the ICC-SA community? The computational opportunities in front of you in this particular case. So I summarized it into 4, 5 areas, 6 areas, or 7 areas there. Now, there are many areas I believe we can collaborate on. I was just telling before the presentation to Beniniamo, like probably the reason I came this way, of course, for the interesting conference and building partnerships and the collaborations and also the friendships. In addition to that, I think this community can build a strong research partnerships together to work on some of the key challenges in the world right now. And honestly, since I'm working in this area for last 20 years or so, there's a huge gap. People are not talking with each other. Data scientists are separate. Computer engineers work on their own domain. Civil engineers somewhere, urban planners somewhere. So having that common platform point of view, I see this audience, this community is a very good choice. So probably down in the road, we should discuss about such opportunities together. So I will not read one by one, but the details of these areas, but high fidelity modeling, data-driven intelligence point of view, optimizations point of view, lots of optimization questions comes there, especially about the multi-objective or many objective optimization. When you have 10, 12 different objective functions, how to find the right balance of those models. But the energy systems, resiliency, scalable computing, open science collaboration platforms, and so on. So people, tools, evidence, yes, this part I already talked about. So the The next frontier, I think when Claudia presented 2 days back in her keynote, she mentioned about the digital twins. Life cycle and the digital twins, she said that they just started it, implementing it. And in my presentation also, I saw it. When I prepared it, I prepared this before she presented, but at the same time, I see the same thing. Now, as a test bed, to see our the life cycle impacts and the implementation of different scenarios point of view, we have to have strong digital twins. And these should be like every major community, and they can stress test their options. And it doesn't matter whether it's a large or a small community, they can test what sort of impacts they have if they have certain decisions on policies. With that, I think I took about 45 minutes. That was my aim to finish this presentation. With that, I wrap up my presentation. And if you want to see some of the papers which my group have published, that's the Google Scholar profile, and you can Google my name as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kasun, for your impressive presentation. Very great speech. Question in the room? Okay.
Thank you so much. It was really a great talk. So many lessons to be learned. But I would like to ask you about what baby steps can be done, because this is a scenario that it's very difficult to implement in Portugal because of the politicians we have, because of the funding we have. So the reality is a bit different. So do you have any advices on baby steps that we can do in the university to have this connection with politicians, with communities, and so on? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that's a great question. And I faced the same situation about, as I mentioned, 20 years ago in Canada when we started this research. I think politicians and the decision makers want to see proven case studies. So as a baby step, first step, if you can have some sort of projects which you can demonstrate to the politicians that it will make a huge impact. The word impact is important for these politicians because they want to get elected next time as well. So if you show that if you do this way, it has an impact and it has a good marketing, and then they will get into it. Second part which I mentioned is that we cannot do research in the universities without funding. We need funding. In my case, I went with baby steps, first with the industry before the government. Because when you go to the governments, they always have the reluctance to initially start things without knowing whether it will work or not. When the private sector invests you, then yes, there's a confidence. So my first 5-6 years in academia were only working with private sector with my contacts and the local municipalities to build that confidence. So I would say those are the two main steps I would take before reaching to the politicians and the governments.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions?
Thank you for talk, really exciting. Just a quick question: how do you talk to your thoughts about how the platform deals with the trade-off of the biases of the actors involved in the kind of project? For instance, as your first slide about the car, electric car and fuel car. In Brazil, some states, the economy is based on oil extraction. Another states, the economy is based on mining. So the states which is based on mining is fighting for electric cars. It's good for them, but it's not good. It's not sustainable. So how to deal with this kind of trade-off in a platform way? Thank you.
Thank you. A great question there. I think, especially with the current geopolitical conditions, all the nations are looking for the best use of their resources. Even though I pitched Canada as a nation who's thriving for the sustainability, Canada wants to be an energy superpower as well. And I think 2 weeks back, Germany signed a major liquefied natural gas deal with Canada worth of few $1 billion. Soon after that, last week, another German company signed another deal with Canada. So even though the province I am coming from, British Columbia, 98% of the energy is renewable, we are selling our energy to the world, right? Natural gas and the oil and so on. So there's a conflicting argument here. So you are talking about sustainability, at the same time, you are developing your renewable resources. So that's a geopolitical condition. So when you pitch that one to your particular question on the provinces, certain provinces have mining, certain provinces have oil, and so on. I think it is the responsibility of the federal government to have a policy for the entire country, not for those provinces alone. It's challenging, it's difficult, and politicians are always hit by different provinces on certain policies, but it's happening in Canada. So you have to have that guts and the ability to say to the general public that this is where we want to reach. And to reach, we have to have certain actions, and then we all have to go together. It's challenging. I'm not a politician. I cannot speak for them, but I see their struggle.
Other questions? Okay, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, when you showed the slide with the hydrogen buses, you have to consider I manage 2 projects with hydrogen. Okay, if you consider hydrogen, green hydrogen, otherwise I would like to avoid to discuss other kind of hydrogen because that has no sense in this case. With green hydrogen, you have to produce energy with renewable energy sources. Located, this kind of renewable energy sources has an impact. After that, you lose more or less 30–40% of energy for producing hydrogen, because otherwise from this energy. And also this means that probably if you can continue to use electric buses, it could be better because otherwise you save 30–40% of hydrogen. And also you have to consider that one hydrogen bus, the cost is €600,000.
Yeah.
And in this case, you have to consider if I spend these huge resources for buying these buses, probably I can give more services to citizens, avoiding to use the private car with the traditional bus. This, in a life cycle approach, is important to compute also these kind of aspects. Otherwise, okay, everyone can say it's interesting to have new technologies, but you have to also process this.
Yeah.
I would like to listen your opinion about this.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for bringing that particular topic. So I'll be very frank here. When we were analyzing the hydrogen buses, it was ranked far below the electric buses at this moment. So now you said that the cost of a hydrogen bus versus an electric bus and the technology maturity as well. People know how to use electric buses and the grid is there, charging network and so on. Hydrogen point of view, it is still not there. But at the same time, these municipalities are challenged with the peak energy demand. If all the buses and the cars and all these people are using the energy in a given period of time, all of a sudden, the system can trip off. So they want to have an alternative. Alternatives are diesel, you can keep on the diesels, or thinking about hydrogen. This is about the thinking phase, thinking for the future hydrogen use. And as you said, that green hydrogen use, and the storing point of view, where to store, how to store, and at the same time, how to charge or refuel the buses. It's still ongoing. I believe in Vancouver, yes, in Vancouver, 2 or 3 hydrogen buses are already operating as pilots, as pilot projects, just to collect some data and how it works. But in the city I'm coming from, it's still not there. We want to see whether it makes sense at this moment. Cost is a huge issue, and the refueling is a huge issue there.
In my city, there are 10 hydrogen buses.
Very nice.
No, but I don't know.
Yes.
Other questions?
Thank you really for this amazing work. Do you think that the local authorities, from your experience, are ready to apply the life cycle thinking to the governance of the urban transformations in Canada and in your example? So moving from project to process and trying to coordinating with multi-actor, multidisciplinary. I mean, it is really a challenge, no? And so,
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, first of all, I think the way I approach certain municipalities, cities of Vancouver, Vernon, Kelowna, I worked with maybe a few dozens of municipalities. I first request the city manager to give me a chance to speak to the council. So me or one of my postdocs or a grad student go there, and they only give us 5 to 10 minutes, usually 10 minutes. Within that 10 minutes, I pitch to them the use of the life cycle assessment, the strengths of life cycle assessments in decision making, and how it can change your decision making in the long term. Because educating, they don't like that word, educating those politicians are very important before you jump into the city level. So that's the first step I usually take. And then when you go to the city managers and the engineers and the technical staff, it's an easy part. They are technical people. When we show them the science behind the decisions, they really like it. Now, the last part you mentioned about the governance point of view. So how to make this a practicality? That's the challenge. So now we have to translate these engineering or the scientific decisions to the technical, like the governance, the regular guidelines. In those cases, I took support from certain other professors who are working in those areas who are policy experts, especially from the faculties of management and business. So they helped me in translating that science to a policy guideline. So that's few-step process. Welcome.
One more? Okay, I have a okay. No, I have a question. No, I don't understand.
Please, no more questions.
No, one more question.
You do
From our common friend, Nahid.
Nahid.
He sent me a message. I attended remotely.
Yeah.
And he sent me a question on WhatsApp for
Oh,
you.
okay.
No, I can, just for laughing, I can synthesize probably you know the sentence from Niels Bohr. It's very difficult to make prediction, especially for the future. No?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay. All to be opted for scenario-based analysis with possible events that may occur in the future, and those possibilities are predominantly based on assumptions related to what happened in the past. However, due to the increasing uncertainties associated with abrupt and uncertain occurrences by climate events, how can envision scenario with a greater sense of confidence? What are the challenges embedded in that for the academicians?
Sure. So now, if I rephrase the question which Nahid, one of my colleagues, posted here online. So it's about how to predict these extreme climatic conditions and how to plan for it. How do we know these extremes? There's a good news and a bad news. Good news is that there are specialized research groups who are working full time on developing these models for extreme climatic conditions. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already happening. And some of my students are already using such tools. The second case is that at the same time, we predict certain extremes in the scenarios as well. For example, having 45 degree Celsius temperature, which can happen right now, 40, 41, 45 can happen. If it is what will happen to the grid, we can model it, we can do the scenario testing. But it's more like trial and error. But mainly, Nahid, what I am suggesting is that depend on those established future extreme climatic models which they have already developed. Especially there's a group in US. Unfortunately, the current president fired the entire team, but now they developed another website with their information. So, but there are certain people who are working day and night on predicting these extreme conditions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question for you. Thank you, sir.
And here as announcement for you, for everything. Thank you. And sorry if wasted a little bit time, but it's not important to eat, it's important to discuss.
I think it is important, both things. Yes. So I have just to announce something to. Okay, it doesn't work. Okay. So I hope you are enjoying the conferences and all the sessions. So tonight we will have the gala dinner, and the gala dinner will be, oh, not this one, sorry. This doesn't say anything. Oh, maybe I didn't. Oh, I didn't save. Sorry. So maybe I can show that there is outside in the announcements, the announcements for the transportation. So we will have one bus from University of Minho here, and at 6:30, one bus at here, University of Minho, in the close to the roundabout, where we have the sign, the red sign of University of Minho. One bus will be there, and one bus at inside hotel, so in the city center at 6:30. Okay. The same hour. Okay, the same hour at 6:30. Two different buses. Yes, two different buses leave at 6:30. One from university and the other from inside hotel. That buses go to Bom Jesus. That will be the gala dinner at Bom Jesus, Colunata Eventos, and then they return. And they return both to the city center. Okay, they will go from the inside hotel from the city center, both hotels, both buses, sorry, and they will stop also here at university. They go, these buses depart at 7:19, okay? So two buses at 6:30 and two buses at 7. All of them stop at university. So the first from at 6:30 departs from University of Minho. The other departs from the center. Okay. The second two at 7 depart from the center, but also stop here. Okay. Any question?
Yes. Do you need to know who is going? Because imagine that everybody is going the X7. So maybe you need to know in advance who is
I think it will be very complicated. I hope that many people can go on the first one, because there's a very nice space in Bom Jesus is very beautiful with beautiful gardens. You can also go by your own using the funicular. Okay, you can go before, not using our buses, because you can use the public bus, and there is a public bus that goes to this funicular, so you can go by your own before. Okay, so, and we hope to have everybody. Okay, maybe there's no problem, I hope. Okay, so this is the outside in the announcements. It is the correct or the updated announce. Okay, the lunch today is in the same place as yesterday. Please go and enjoy. Thank you. Olá, eu só entrei aqui a meio da apresentação e pronto, estamos a chegar a mensagem, já fez o check-in e tudo, já tem o certinho todo, pronto. Vamos almoçar então.
Vamos daqui, mas
Vamos lá.
à tarde não vai ter aqui coisa.
Tem sempre.
Deixa-me só ver se está tudo bem na minha. Então.
Mas tem sempre sessões que está a ser usada, mas podemos testar
Eu só
agora.
quero dar uma vistinha de olhos, mais nada.
Sim.
E que eu não fiz com a largura toda. Não sabia se era largo, se não era.
E eu não percebi como é que eu